Okay, so let's see if I can figure out Windows. Oops, no, I wanted that one. So in the notes document, which is this one, we've been capturing a bunch of different challenges coming out of these different projects and capturing some other notes, and if people have things that they want to write, that would be great. At this point, we've kind of talked about, Luigi's talked about Clowder and its features and talked about Clowder in some ways in the current group of people. I kind of view this as two different groups in some sense. There's the people that have been funded under the CSSI project that are identified as collaborators, who have some specific roles and something that they're being asked to do, whether it's being a user, whether it's being a feature generator, whether it's being part of the steering committee, whether it's actually contributing some code. And then we have the larger community, which the goal of Clowder is to get beyond the people that are funded and really make this a bigger open source project that has people contributing because it helps them, because they want to, because they're going to get something out of it. And so the question that I want to address, or the topic that I want to talk about really, is how we do that. And so specifically, I wanted to start with understanding who's here in the room right now. So if you are currently part of the CSSI project, please put up your hand. Okay, and if you're here because you're interested in collaborating potentially, but you're not part of that project? Okay, so that's quite a good number. And if you're here for some other reason, that you were just bored or something, so wanted to come to Chicago on Sunday afternoon. So then, let's see if I can, all right. So I think then it's also worth thinking about, are there people that you know, or the people that we know that you think would be interested in this? And we don't need to actually talk about this for the minute, but if you have thoughts on other people that are doing things like this that Clowder could help with, it would be great to try to capture those, to either put them into this document or to talk with any of the Clowder people here. And the second piece then is, are there also projects that you think could be using Clowder? So both people and projects in kind of two different sense, individual investigators as well as kind of larger projects potentially. So I think we're interested in both of those things. I think ideally larger projects in the same ways that some of the projects that have been identified here, because those projects need to do things, and if they can do less themselves and leverage work that's being done by other people, then that's something that they should want to do. And then individual researchers, kind of for the same reason, but they're maybe because their individual research questions that they're asking are something that they're not able to do as well as they want, or they're not able to actually ask the question they want to. They can only ask a small scale version of the question and not the larger scale version or something like that. So we're really looking for ideas of people like that. I have no idea what to do with this. So again, if you have suggestions, please let us know. And I guess in particular, if you have suggestions on methods for getting to people like this. So if you have ideas of communities that we should be going out to, maybe giving talks about Clowder. If you're going to be going out to talks like precision agriculture conference, and you're going to be talking, maybe you can mention Clowder in that talk, and we can try to see if that helps bring people in. So I think one of the questions, which we'll get to at the bottom, is kind of how people contribute, and we can think of people contributing in terms of individual people or individual projects, but we also could think about maybe disciplinary consortia or domain-specific groups that maybe could come together. And so again, we're interested in thinking about things like this. Yeah, Clara.
I would suggest to have one or two slides that you could share with us that we can plug into, because one of the things that happens is that we actually will evangelize our systems, for example, in the materials area, or in the biology, or in the historical social science data. And there actually would be useful to have one or two slides.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's a very good idea. I'm assuming that somebody that's on the Clowder team is actually capturing this, and I almost was hoping that that's just going to magically appear in this document, but we'll see.
I'm capturing.
Okay. All right, so maybe this isn't, maybe I'm not updating at this point because of the not being signed in. So if anybody has any other suggestions, well, sorry, does anybody have any other suggestions we could just talk about quickly? Yeah.
So I would recommend presenting this at like ALA, American Library Association. It seems like many libraries are in this spot where they have long-term repository resources, they have specific exhibit resources, but supporting faculty research on demand with some kind of infrastructure that can hold and share research data and also stage certain kinds of computational processes is in high demand from what I can tell, and is a pipe dream for most universities because they're not going to cook up a framework like that from scratch.
Okay, yeah, I think that's a great idea, and it actually, I think, potentially helps with the contributors as well, because the research data people at those universities potentially could put some time in and customize things for themselves too, so
And
that's,
maybe it's
yeah, that's
purely
great.
wishful thinking, but it's possible that like you might have better luck having relationships with the people who hold content licenses than individual researchers. So if it talks about getting data from a big content provider, maybe you would have better luck than an individual person who's just in a small research group who just wants to get the plain text off of EBSCO or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think we might ask if there are people that have good connections into that community that might be able to help us. I don't know if you might be one of those. So.
Yes, I will help.
Okay, great, thank you.
To that
So-
question, what are the big differentiators between Clowder and something like Rosetta?
Do you mean like to whom?
To the faculty researcher that you're trying to store data sets.
So I think it's not just a matter of storing it. I think the kind of emphasis on reproducibility and transparency is kind of weighing heavily on a lot of folks. But then also being able to compute in the same environment that you store through the extractor system is very appealing to many folks, just in terms of capabilities.
So most of being just a curated repository is something you can actually work with and visualize.
Yeah, and I think the use goes beyond curation, just because it seems like the extraction system is very flexible, wherein you can actually run a number of different workflows and then get a number of different results and then share out those results. So it seems like you can rapidly get to a place that with the existing tools available to folks, it's either really expensive or you just don't really have it available to.
Okay, yeah, I have to say, I don't really want to get into a lot of details like this, because I feel like we should talk more about how people contribute than some of the details, but sorry, Jim, did you?
Well, sort of continuing in that vein, I think one of the, I'll try and make it useful. I think one of the things that, as we were talking about digital humanities at University of Michigan and with the Michigan Computing Center, is that a lot of the current things that are out there, there were Omikas and Rosettas, all these sorts of things, the model was go and say you want this, find somebody who's going to, for your project, set up how you do your metadata and everything, and then after you get through all of that, you can finally use it. And with Clowder, go in, set up a space, go type in the metadata that you want in your space, and voila, it's there. And so the amount of per user group setup is completely different with Clowder, and I think that's
Okay.
part of the argument for these other communities is that, right, if you're gonna take on, I have to do this at university scale, you can't do that with something that's gotta have set up per user group.
Okay, so Anna?
So I'm new to Clowder. We just started. Do you guys have similar to Exceed? Like if you have used Exceed resources and in your publication you have a specific reference to Exceed, so you can keep track when you
Or
write your
citation.
paper?
I think there's a paper, right? Yeah, there's a paper on the homepage that we ask people to cite if possible.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think the most powerful advertising for using Clowder is that you create your case study. I mean, I'm envisioning the permafrost discovery to be like a pilot for Arctic science, that people enjoy it and see what they can do. You just replace permafrost with sea ice and plug it in. So I think that's the most powerful.
Okay, thank you. John, did you want to?
Well, I didn't know whether, I haven't heard RDA mentioned here as a means of reaching the community, and I don't know how much has been done there.
Yeah, so I think that's certainly a good suggestion as well. So, okay. Okay, so let's go on a little bit then. So I think then, if we think about the different challenges that people talked about in the earlier talks, there's a set of a bunch of things, and again, that's kind of captured. One of the questions, I think, is that if we think about people that could contribute, there's people that potentially could contribute because there's some challenge that's actually going to help them. And those people, I think it's reasonable to ask them potentially to do something big because they're doing it for themselves as well, and then they can share it with other people. I think that's in some sense the model that the CSSI collaboration really has. But if we think about trying to get beyond that to some extent, one of the questions often is then, can you break up the things that need to be done into small enough units that somebody can take them on in the spare time that they have available? And I don't know if we're doing that well or not at this point. And I don't know if we're really even pointing to the wiki in a way that people that are potentially developers interested in this are going to find those challenges and those features that they could potentially work on. So I guess one kind of question a little bit is using the wiki for this versus using tagged issues for this, or something that's more of an open source standard methodology. And so I think that's just a question. For people that are collaborating, I think having a set of tools that are the collaborations tools is great, and that works fine. But if we're thinking about people beyond that, I think there's, again, a question about where they go and what they're used to seeing. So I don't know if anybody has any kind of comments about any of the things that they're talking about that they would like to see, if they can think of ways that those could be broken up into small pieces that maybe, I don't know, maybe a student could work on one during a summer if that's a small enough piece, or maybe if there's some kind of documentation needed or some kind of something else that somebody could work on it for an afternoon and actually get something done and feel like they'd made an accomplishment of some kind. So yeah.
I was just gonna mention, when you said about breaking up small units, I mean, all the cool kids are doing hackathons now.
Yep.
Maybe a Clowder hackathon sponsored event, just to it gets an output, but one of the intangible benefits is exposure.
That's a good idea as well. I don't know if that's in the current planning or not, if that was in the proposal.
Not specifically happened, so it's a great idea.
Okay.
Nowadays, yeah. And also, like, I love your idea of saying that, there is a list of very visible tasks that are small that people can pick up, and we really need to do that.
Right, yeah, I mean, so it seems like in some projects, the list of issues has some that are tagged as like initial project or starter project or something like that.
And we didn't mention it, but we use Jira heavily, and so we
Yeah.
do have a space where we can do that right now. And we also, on GitHub, there's issues, we left them open, and we've
Okay.
been starting to get people actually use them, but it's usually for bugs and not suggestions.
Right. I think the other question, I guess, that I was thinking about is kind of coding and contribution standards. And so I honestly don't know at this point how well that's being done, and if people, I'd say if a random person comes in and puts in a pull request, if somebody's going to say, thank you very much, this is a great idea, but here's a few things that we need you to do in order for us to accept it, or if there's already going to be something where you don't have to have that conversation because they can actually see what's being requested. Okay.
There is the CLA for all contributions from external people. We do request them to sign a CLA. So
Okay.
that part.
Yeah,
Right, but
in
I-
terms of coding standards, we don't
Yeah.
have those public. So we do some of that, but it's basically,
Okay.
it's not transparent. It's not,
So again, that's kind of things that I was thinking about, but I don't know, does anybody have other comments on things that we should be doing to try to make this more appealing for people to contribute to? Yeah, David?
I'm not commenting on this community, and I know some of my communities are pretty bad at this, but I think that like quickly responding to people, like having some target day or week of responding to people.
Right. So I will say on that there's, I saw a study somewhere, and I don't actually know if this was a very formal study or if this was more anecdotal, that there's kind of two different ways that projects, well, maybe three different ways that projects answer questions. All right, there's some projects that don't really do a good job of answering questions at all, which is, we'll just ignore that one. There's one where people on the project team answer questions really quickly, and users are happy. but that's kind of the end of the story. And there's the third one is where people on the projects actually wait a little bit to answer questions to try to see if somebody else is going to answer the question first, with the idea of trying to build up that practice of not being, of the project not having to answer everything, but trying to build up a community of people that actually are helping each other. And so, again, I think that's, well, again, I don't know if that's really an anecdote or a study. I feel like I read it somewhere, but.
With that, right, this is what Luigi was saying, in Slack, don't ping Luigi directly.
Yeah, yeah.
Put it on the general community, because there's lots of people there that are in our group that will answer your question as well. So if Luigi does a notification, which God bless his heart, he's allowed to do sometimes, then somebody else will answer your question, and you won't sit there waiting for Luigi to answer while he's sitting somewhere on the beach.
And this is a conversation that we have all the time, not being on vacation, but everybody contributing to that conversation. And so all of us need to be better at that. When I say all of us, I mean everyone, right? And I don't know how to basically encourage that. Like, I don't, it's a hard thing to do, right? So it would be nice if, anyone who's contributing is listening in and can help out in that conversation. But it's a lot to ask of people as well. I don't know how you do that, right?
Right, but if you.
The CSSI project will allow us to have some time to dedicate to that. Things will get better from that point of view, but it can't be the usual people paid by the CSSI project, right? To be doing all that. That's not an open source community.
Right, so if you do happen to be on and you see a question and you know the answer, you don't need to wait for somebody at NCSA to answer that question. You can help. Sorry, so JP and then Anna?
Yeah, if the community could document the high-level capabilities or use cases that are supported by Clowder, and the ones that are not, people want, right? And there was sort of a standard catalog where you could keep those. Then people could easily contribute, I'd like to be able to do X, but I can't do it myself. And then other people could discover that and say, this is also interesting to me, and I have a student who can do it for us this summer.
Right.
Right, sort of thing. And so sort of organizing the functionality that Clowder supports into a catalog of use cases and things that are not supported yet.
Yep.
Even.
Yeah, so so I feel like part of that is actually a very clear roadmap that, right, that includes things that aren't done but are being thought of, or maybe that aren't being thought of, but somebody else could have a way of adding to the roadmap. So Anna and then Carol.
Yeah, so do you currently have kind of groups with similar interests? Like, so we have these individual projects, and I think today we heard that there's people that are interested in machine learning and deep learning. We're using it for different reasons, but for the same techniques. So do you currently have a community? Okay. So I think that would be a cool thing to have, a community where you have a Slack group for that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to your point of how to engage the community and helping each other, I think that links into the credit part too. Is that if you have already built an artificial intelligence tool for something that could be used for another field, that you make sure that the person that's giving credit to it. So I think that's just a positive feedback.
That's a great point, and we do emphasize the contributors to the core everywhere we can, and we keep that list up to date. Also extractors and other things that manifest where you see the authors.
Yeah.
And so it's really, and this is what we're starting to tell people is, if you contributed and share with everyone else, like they'll see like your name, they'll come and talk to you. And so we try to do some of that, but I'm sure we can do more.
Right. I mean, it might actually be even worth thinking about like DOIs for extractors or something like that at some point.
So one of the things in the extractors themselves is the citation. So you can put in, if you use this, how do you want to be cited?
Right. So sorry. So Carol, and then.
I had two questions, but I think Anna brought up one of those, so I'm going to go to the next one.
Okay.
So one very specific. So I'm feeling that the idea of using Slack for office hours, that sounds like an interesting idea that could be tried. But Slack is not really good having threads, right?
Right.
So do you guys have something like a message board or something like that to remind that it's better for tracking?
I'll let Luigi answer.
We tried something that comes with the Atlassian suite of tools called Questions. We could have a Stack Overflow tag. We don't. If people know if you have suggestions for things that people will use, then we can try for sure. The hardest part is to find something that people know.
Yeah, we ran into that problem
So,
too. I
But-
just feel like you
Yeah.
could be really discouraged when you go
Yeah.
to Slack and you just
I totally,
can't
yeah,
track.
I totally understand that. So the GitHub repository, we keep the issues open, that's a good place. You know, if you have suggestions, we just have to make it clear to people that that's where you go if you wanna have an asynchronous kind of suggestions, right? And also we have a Jira, so if we start pushing people there, we can do that there. That's a good place, and also the Jira, that next site.
Right, so we're, sorry, so we're actually like 2 minutes over time now, so I just want to say officially, if people need to leave, please feel free to, don't feel like you have to stay. But we'll probably try to wrap up maybe in 3 more minutes, just so to like 5 after. So, go ahead.
So, really a comment, so I'll start by saying that like, today is really the first day that I really got to really appreciate all of the facets of what Clowder is. I mean, previously, I knew some of it through my collaboration with Clara, and the impression that I got is that it's really, or it's you're trying to be, or and then many aspects of it is very well vertically integrated, right? You're talking about working with raw data and taking in that metadata, and then you go all the way to publishing, right? So in that aspect is very cool. I like my feeling for it is, you know, like if you could even entice people, you know, how would you entice people to come into this community, right? Maybe people already have some pre-established workflow, like, well, I want to share with Google Drive or whatever,
Mhm.
right? Like that those would be somehow integrated or whatever, right? So like even if people could just tear one piece of Clowder and bring that home, right, without using the entire vertically integrated stack, I think that would be really valuable.
Okay, yeah, I think, right, so there's trade-offs between integration and having something that's very componentized and, I don't know, break-apartable. So I don't know, I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer that, but thank you for the input, I think that's,
Yeah, I would just add that from a technical perspective, we actually have plugins that you can turn on and off, and that's how we have been supporting domain-specific and use case-specific needs without basically overwhelming the user who doesn't care about that specific feature. And so that's what I meant by we have to clean that out, because it's somewhat hidden in the configuration file, and people don't know about it. And also we have to, in kind of like our coding standards and everything else, make it very clear when something should be a plugin and when something should be part of the core, which we right now do internally in discussions between developers. But again, it's better if it's a much broader conversation.
right, I will say one other thing is that some of the other pieces like the extractors potentially could be used outside of Clowder as well. So there's been some discussion with some of the Globus folks about some things that could be done there, and I think that's maybe another way to go, is to think about how these pieces could be more general so that there's even more of an incentive for somebody to create them. So I think then the one other question that I guess I just want to throw out briefly is, right now there's a steering committee, and the steering committee is people that are basically funded by the CSSI in some sense. There's also the core contributors, who are people that have made contributions and have been deemed kind of worthy in some sense based on their contributions, on the merit of what they've done. I don't know if that's completely sufficient to think about encouraging more people to contribute, either code or not code. I don't know that it's not either. I think it's just a question that's worth thinking about. And so I guess I just wanted to see from other people that are here, is there something that could be done to recognize contributions and kind of to bring you into the governance in some sense that would be helpful? And I'm not saying that this would happen, because it would have to actually fit, I mean, it would have to fit the project as well, but I just wanted to throw this out and see if there were ideas about not just recognition, but if you're going to contribute, how you're sure that contribution actually, that you have some control over the project, and that your contribution is going to stay there and is going to help your project or your research case. And I think it's a hard question, yeah, Clara?
I would like to sort of have a somewhere portal where one can upload publications that are related to Clowder. I think that's going to be a metric anyway that we have to report to NSF. And so if there is a wiki somewhere to basically upload that as we go over the 5 years. I think that would be sort of useful. Another thing is it's not only publications. More and more there are conferences that are actually allowing publishing data sets, and they are citable. And so it would be great if, as part of the Clowder effort, there would be people might host somewhere the data sets, but then basically that gets published. I don't know. There are also sort of DOIs for data. Some of them are not. But for example, in my community, the systems people are tremendously publishing all kinds of data, make them public, and then other people use those data and put on top of that. And since the Clowder integrates us, we could actually immediately build on top of it, right? The hydrological data or whatever, if that's a possibility to open up, and then people can, but the data sets become very important. So that's the second thing to publish. And then third thing is some of the software. There are GitHubs, and I know that there's a Clowder software, but as we heard today, there is much more than just the Clowder, particularly as we are working in various domains. We are developing new interfaces, we are developing new libraries and so on. We are putting them actually for a community of material scientists into another GitHub directory for those people just to download whatever is that whole system. And those particular things to connect.
Okay, thank you. So again, in the interest of time, we could probably keep doing this for another 20 or 30 minutes fairly easily, but I think I'll just point out that that somebody, so it was interesting. I started writing this document probably 3 hours ago on the bottom piece of it, and put down things I thought people were going to want to talk about, and somebody added this user collaboration group piece, which I think is a great idea. And so I guess I just wanted to kind of in closing say that if you're interested in being involved in some kind of a user discipline collaboration group, or if you're interested potentially in leading one on behalf of how you would work with Clowder and what should be done in Clowder to make this discipline or this research area work, please let one of the team here know. I don't know, Luigi perhaps as an example, or Kenton or somebody else, or me. And other than that, I think I really just kind of want to thank everybody for coming, and in terms of the applications, for giving out, for talking about these examples and talking about it in a way I think that really has been helpful and makes it clear what the research questions are and how the Clowder piece works and what needs to be done to make this work better. And to, I guess, Luigi, in terms of just explaining all the details about where Clowder is now and where things are going. And then for everybody in helping to think about how we move this whole community forward and we turn it into a larger project. So I will say thank you and ask if Kenton wants to say anything finally before we go.
That's basically it. I want to thank everybody for taking the time to come. Please participate. So we all have projects that we'll still continue to work on together, but these kind of other extra pieces, be on Slack, answer questions, contribute code, contribute extractors. Let's do a little more of that, and we'll figure out the next steps into turning this into a true open source community that's able to sustain all of our activities. So, again, thanks for coming. This has been a fantastic experience. Thank you. If you haven't already, please take a plush cat too.